Welcome to part 23 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the corruption and cover-up that ensued. A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are also in this story. So we are now on the 6th of 7 hearings to address the probation violation of the 3 Drizzes being caught in a surprise home search with a loaded, stolen, chambered pew-pew, illegal white powder, and the green plants in a duffel bag. So we are now back down. It's like a ping pong match. Like we're in airport court and for Alberto Drizz's thing, and then we're back in downtown for Maurice's thing. So we're now back downtown, Judge Mader's courtroom. And we have the amazing DDA, Casey Higgins, back because remember the last, 2 parts ago, his replacement downtown for the DDA, Miriam Avalos, was like, what am I doing here? He needs to be here. I have no idea what's going on. So I like her for that. So now Casey Higgins is back because he knows all the details and he's representing the people. So this is how it should work, And we're covering, we're covering Maurice Drizz's probation violation and his attorney, Mark Worksman, is representing him. Now, for this hearing, there's 2 people that take the stand. The first one is the investigating probation officer, the one that just did the surprise probation search and found all the stuff. So she actually takes the stand. And me and my brother and a bunch of our friends actually went up and said hello to her and met her and had a chat with her after this hearing. So that's going to be very interesting. So we're going to be getting into Schwarzenegger stuff and TMZ stuff in this section in the next part. Okay, so let's start it off. So probation officer Don Contreras, that's the name of the investigating officer who runs that department. And it's called the LA County Probation Department High Risk GPS Unit. What they do is they're not specifically attached to any specific case. They just drive around LA County and they just pull up addresses of felons and they look it up and they go, okay, let's do a surprise search here. And they look up their pictures, what their requirements and probation status is, because they should know this, what to look for, for each person. So anyways, they decide to pull up to their Beverly Hills luxury condo. And when she gets there, Alberto Drizz, the owner of the condo, he's home, but he's the only one home. Sean is away, probably at Christina's house. Maurice is, Alberto tells the officer that Maurice is downtown LA working. He's not there. So he's employed. Interesting, because they keep trying to say they're indigent and broke. Okay, so Alberto Drizz, so she's on the stand, and Don Contreras, the probation officer, says that Alberto was extremely concerned during the search about his doorman and the valet parkers seeing the cops in uniforms with full gear. Again, these guys are indigent and broke. That's the poverty I want to live in, where you're so indigent that you're upset that your valet parker and your doorman are going to be like, ooh, what's going on? She said that Alberto was very upset and very tense while the house was being searched. I wonder why. And that at one point, Alberto asked her, hey, can I make a business call? Because I'm supposed to have a business meeting, shortly here. So could you guys wrap this up? This doesn't look good. Can I please, make a business call? Now, she says that normally for officer safety purposes, no one's ever allowed to, the probationer is never allowed to make a phone call, but she allowed it out of a nicety because at the end of the day, you don't want to screw, say he didn't do anything wrong during the probation search, which he did, but you don't want to screw up their business and their future if, just during doing a routine check like that. So I'm not mad at her for going, okay, you can call your business person to tell them to cancel the meeting. However, Alberto is a known liar and he's not known to be a genius. So he gets on his phone and he sends a text message, and the phone is on that thing where you set it up where it repeats out loud back to you who you just texted and what you texted. So it repeated out loud that he was texting Maurice Drizz, his brother, and that the text was probation. So she immediately was like, stop it. I told you not to call any of the other felons, whatever. So she had to take the phone, I think, or whatever, but she stopped that. Okay, so then 30 minutes after that text is sent, Maurice Drizz shows up. He shows up at the house during the search. Alberto starts getting really nervous, and he asks the officer if he can go and take his heart medication. That's not the white powder with the rolled up dollar bills that they found during that exact moment, too. It's a different medication for his heart. Just want to make a note of that. And while Don Contreras is on the stand telling us all of this, because DDA Higgins is, asking her all these questions, this is one of 5 or 6 times that Judge Mader interrupts the DDA. And by the way, we were all there witnessing this too. We're in the back watching all this. She kept interrupting the DDA every time he was making a really valid point or laying out really, really, really important facts that would, he's not asking, Maurice, like, so what color are your eyes? He's asking detailed facts to lay out a situation that will lead to 7 years of prison. And she kept interrupting him and telling him to wrap it up and stuff. So that really upset me. Still does to this day. So, okay, so the judge interrupts, whatever, starts rushing DDA Higgins. And so he keeps asking questions, and Don Contreras, the probation officer on the stand, says, when they searched Alberto's bedroom, in the top drawer of his nightstand in a sunglass case was the pew-pew. It was a semi-automatic .25 caliber Beretta, stolen, registered to somebody else. When the probation officer told the twins that they found the pew-pew in their access, they both simultaneously put their heads down. And then Maurice Driz said, "Oh, it's just a family heirloom." And then she said she wasn't sure after that who said what, but one of them then said, she said it was probably Alberto because they both were agreeing with each other. But one of them, probably Alberto, said, yeah, it's a family heirloom. Our aunt gave it to us. It's very special to us, So she says all this, and then the judge interrupts again. Judge Mader interrupts again, and she interrupts the probation officer, and she actually says, no, you know what? No, you're not sure who said any of that. You're not sure. It could have been either one. The probation officer says, no, I remember the family heirloom. I was sure of that Maurice said. So she just kind of checks her, like, don't question what I'm saying or what I'm remembering. Like, I remember, and we also had the entire probation unit and the entire police department of 6 officers from Beverly Hills Police Department there. Okay, so then she starts talking about how they went into Maurice's room. And in Maurice's room, on felony probation for a violent crime, they found weed paraphernalia, drug paraphernalia. In Alberto's room, they found the rolled up dollar bills with the illegal white powder on them. And there were no locks on any of the bedroom doors in this like luxury condo. And there was no locks on the nightstand. So all 3 felons had access and were violating probation by having access. Because it's on them, not anyone else, to know if this is in the house. So, hold on, where did that just go? So, the heirloom statements that were made in front of the 6-person probation team and the Beverly Hills Department, Officer Contreras says, yeah, everybody witnessed, my entire team witnessed them say this. So you could subpoena every single, like a dozen people with badges, and they would all say, yeah, we said that. It's also in the report. So this happened, okay? So at this point, oh God, okay, a couple minutes left. Okay, so at this point, this is going to be a couple parts just to do this one hearing. Mark Worksman, the attorney for Maurice Driz, he's like, all right, well, you know what? We are going to put Maurice on the stand. This is the only time that any of the defendants were put on the stand before the civil trial for like this 7 years. The only time. And he says, I'm going to put him on the stand because he's going to say that he never knew about the pew-pew and he didn't say anything about an heirloom, whatever. And he also says, Mark Worksman says, look, and he's trying to say, like, look, it's not a big deal because it's so hard to find the pew-pew. It shouldn't be a violation. He says, in order to know there was a gun in Alberto's room, one would have to enter the room, go around the other side of the bed, go to the second drawer of the nightstand. Oh, are you exhausted already? Open it. Oh my gosh, open it. Take out a sunglass case. Oh my goodness. Open that and then remove its contents. I mean, it's basically not even there. Like, they basically didn't even have access to it. Like, it's not a big deal. And then the judge says, well, the only issue really for me is that whether or not there was a misleading statement made by Maurice to probation about his knowledge of the pew-pew, and if he made a misleading statement that it was an heirloom. Well, he did. You literally just heard the probation officer say, yeah, it's in the report, and I'm saying it under oath, and you can ask the entire team. So before we get to this next part, this is going to be crazy. So the next part is when Maurice Driz gets up on the stand because Mark Worksman wants him to say that the word heirloom is not in his vocabulary. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm going to just film it and just put it up right now. I actually have the energy. So thank you so much to everybody for following along. I'm obsessed with all your questions because they're just really intelligent and sharper than most of the people whose job it actually is to care about the case. So thank you. Welcome to part 24 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the corruption and cover-up that ensued. A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are involved in this story. Okay, so this is just continuing over from part 23, and we're still in the same hearing. We're downtown in Judge Mader's courtroom, and it's all about Maurice Driz trying to get out of the probation violation of the big, like, narcotic firearm raid. So, Mark Worksman, his attorney, is like, Your Honor, I'm going to prove that Maurice never said that statement about, the pew-pew was just a family heirloom. Like, he's trying to say the probation department high-risk GPS officer is lying, and that the dozen or so officers that were witness to this statement by Maurice, that they're all lying. Trust my client, Maurice, who's a proven liar. So he says, okay, I'm going to put him on the stand, Maurice on the stand, and he would tell Your Honor that he did not know that the pew-pew was there. The word heirloom does not even enter his vocabulary. So he gets him on the stand, and so here's the thing. The Drizzes, the twins, they're from Argentina. Their first language is Spanish, but they've been living here 45 plus years. They went to high school at Beverly Hills High School. And they have strong vocabularies. They were using words in the civil trial like interim and stuff like that. Like, come on. And now he puts Maurice on the stand for the sole purpose of making Maurice look like he's only got like a 12-word vocabulary, and that heirloom is a huge thing. He even said at one point, and it's not in the transcript, but we were present for this hearing. And at one point, Mark Worksman was like, for all we know, like, heirloom could mean a tomato. He was maybe talking about tomatoes, blah, blah, blah. Like, that was such BS. So, Maurice Driz, he takes the stand and he says Spanish is his first language. He denies saying the heirloom statement about the pew-pew. So he's saying that the officer was lying. Mark Worksman asks him, did you tell anybody that the pew-pew that was discovered in Alberto's bedroom, was an heirloom? And he goes, I don't know what an heirloom was. I never heard that word before. By the way, we were sitting there and he was really doing this whole, like, struggling to grasp the English language thing. And we know he doesn't speak like that. He was literally sitting there like, how you say cucumber? Like, it was just such BS from beginning to end. So he's lying about all this, saying the cops lying, everybody's lying. He then admits that that's not his home address. He actually lives most of the week at his daughter Tanya Driz's house in Torrance. Apparently she lives there, and he's been living there, but he forgot to tell probation. That in itself is a probation violation, to not give all your addresses or anything to probation. He says the reason he didn't tell probation was because they never asked. So because they didn't say, hey, quick question, do you live with your daughter Tanya Driz in Torrance? Had they asked that, he would have said yes. So that's his excuse, which the Judge Mader is totally fine with, by the way. So then, DDA Higgins, because he's amazing, he just starts going off. Like, he's just making really, really valid points. Here we go. Okay, so he says, the judge says, okay, so the people have the burden of proving that he didn't know about, this pew-pew. And it's like, didn't we just do that with the two witnesses? Like, okay, whatever. So she says, Mr. Higgins, what do you have to say? Please make it brief. I'm very familiar with everything that's gone on in this case. You're telling the DDA to, like, not have details when this is not just us. This is you guys. This is everybody's, like, safety is at risk. And she's like, wrap it up. I don't need the details. Like, lady, you're terrible. You're terrible at what you do, and you're terrible as a person. So DDA Casey Higgins says, okay, they conducted and engaged in behavior that shows that they're not amenable to rehabilitation and supervision. There's been all sorts of problems going on in probation. They reported intoxicated, as we've discussed before, to the jail facility. And the judge says, yeah, but I found him not in violation because nobody told him specifically not to show up wasted and fight cops. Nobody said that specifically. So, great. Then the DDA responds, okay, well, I bring this all up as a totality of the circumstances. You look at past performance. It's just unbelievable that he had no idea about a loaded pew-pew in his brother's room that's unlocked, a location that he tells probation he lives at. But then when he comes here, he says, well, that's not really where I live. I actually live with my daughter. Oh, I didn't tell probation that I live with my daughter. That, again, is not being subject to rehabilitation on probation. How can officers truly see if he's in compliance if they don't even know where he really lives? It's such a great point. And it's also just critical thinking skills. This is what he's the only person Casey Higgins is the only person that displayed any critical thinking skills out of all the judges, the other DDAs, everybody. It's crazy. So he continues and he says, Maurice should be found in violation. Additionally, the crime of a felon in possession of a firearm is not that you personally own it. 2 or more people can have constructive possession. It's access and right to it. He had access and control and right to that pew-pew with no locks on the doors and no locks on the dresser. That's not even an opinion. That's just facts and the law. That's it. So Maurice's attorney gets up and he goes, these are 2 61-year-old twins who are on probation after a devastating situation of their own making. We were present for this, and I remember him saying that quietly after. He says, they've done their jail time. They've lost everything financially and their business. Then he says that their PO officer who's attached to the case, Denise Montalvo, it'd be interesting if she ever had any student loans paid off or a brand new car around early 2018, late 2017 of this. It'd be really interesting to find that out. He says, Denise Montalvo reported to the court after this raid happened and the arrests that Mr. Driz is amenable to probationary supervision. Probation thinks he's in compliance and recommended even if he were in violation, that he be reinstated under the same conditions, no jail time. Ms. Montalvo is happy with his performance, with full knowledge of this incident. So, great. There's a lot of people involved in this breakdown of the judicial system. So then Judge Mader responds, this is crazy, and I quote, I don't find Maurice's testimony credible. A police officer or PO wouldn't make this up. I do find that he is in violation of his probation by not being truthful to the court about the gun. We were so excited in the back row. She says, Maurice has already spent 32 days in county jail, though, as opposed to the cushy Seal Beach situation. So I'm not going to add any additional jail time. Like, that's been enough, right, guys? She says the max she could have given him in this hearing is 7 years in state prison, but she's not going to do that. She says, I'm just tired of the whole scenario involving the Driz brothers and what's going on probation. Mr. Driz, you are on notice. If you violate probation, I'm going to impose 7 years, mister. So that'll show him. That'll teach him. So that's it. Then Mark Worksman, the attorney for Maurice, says, their probation officer, Denise Montalvo, also asks that we remove AA meetings from their requirements because Maurice wants to travel to Mexico twice a month for business. We're not going to tell you what the business is, but he just needs to go to Mexico twice a month. And if he does that, he can't do AA classes. And the judge responds, puts her thinking cap on very momentarily, and she says, always from the beginning, alcohol played an important role. He had alcohol in his system at the Seal Beach jail. So I think alcohol is a big deal here. I'm going to delete AA from his probation requirements. Boom. That's it. So then that's over. We're in shock. I'm bawling in the back row, just bawling. DDA Higgins then says, okay, well, one more thing. The plaintiffs here, they told us that Sean Driz violated his probation again at the probation violation at the hearing. Probation hearing in the airport court last week. He said, have a nice day to the plaintiffs. And the judge says, they have a protective order. And the DDA is like, yeah, they do. And he broke it again. And the judge turns to Maurice and she goes, hey, don't do that. Okay, hearing's over. So that was it. Oh, she added 7 years probation. That was it. So 7 years probation for all of this. No jail time, nothing like that. And it's over. Oh my God, only 1 minute left. Oh, I don't know if I can fit this, but after court, me, my brother, and all of my friends that witnessed, we went and caught up with or PO Don Contreras, the one who was the investigating officer who took the stand. And we were so upset. We're like, why didn't you arrest Sean Driz? Just because he's not there. You found all of the narcotics and the weapons. Why didn't you arrest him? And she was so angry. And in front of all of us, she said, Sean must know someone very, very powerful. We were told to stand down, that we weren't allowed to arrest him. And if we were going to arrest him, it would have to be at his new address at his girlfriend's house in Brentwood. He moved addresses after the raid and the arrests, like that night or the next day. He moved over there. And we were told if we wanted to do another one of these surprise probation searches, it would have to be at his girlfriend's house in Brentwood. And we were told to stand down. She was mad. She was really mad about this. Rightfully so. And we all heard what she said, and I'll just end it there. It's going to get crazy. TMZ is in the next part. Thanks, guys. Welcome to part 25 of Don't Say Schwarzenegger, my story about surviving an attempted unaliving and the cover-up and corruption that ensued. famous A-list celebrities, politicians, and their offspring are involved. Now, I'm just going to really quick just recap what I said in the previous part I posted of my series, part 24, in the very last minute, just in case anybody missed it. But at the end of the hearing downtown in Judge Mader's courtroom for the pew pew white powder probation violation of the men who attacked me, Maurice, at the very end, me, my brother, and my friends, we all went outside the courtroom. We were so upset that the Judge Mader, rewarded Maurice Driz for violating probation. She was like, yes, we're going to remove your travel restrictions. Yes, we're going to remove your AA. Anything you need, honey. So we're like so upset. I've got tears in my eyes. And we wait for Officer Dawn Contreras, the investigating officer who led the raid and who testified in this hearing. So we wait for her outside, and we go up to her, all of us. She says what she says in front of all of us. And I was like, why didn't you arrest Sean Driz? That was his home on probation. That's his home address. In fact, it's in the transcripts that his father and uncle pointed out, that's Sean's bedroom. Yes, that's where the duffel bag full of illegal green plants is, the guy on probation, or felony probation. Yes, that's his room. Judge Mader even said it out loud in one of the other hearings that he was in possession of this. Why didn't you arrest him? Ms. Contreras said to us, and she was angry. She was angry. She was like, look, she's like, I came down here. I made sure that I showed up to testify because I was really angry about what's been going on behind the scenes in this case. She goes, we would have arrested him because it doesn't matter if he's home or not during a felony probation raid. If we find a pew-pew and white powder and stuff in his room, he's on the hook for all of that. She goes, when we went to go arrest him or go wait for him to arrest him, whatever, to arrest him after they arrested the twins, she said, Sean Driz must know somebody very powerful because somebody, don't say the name, somebody called her superior, who then told Dawn Contreras, investigating officer, head of the high-risk GPS unit LA probation team, told her, stand down. You do not arrest Sean Driz. And if you do arrest him, you're going to have to do it at his new address, which was made after the raid. And his new address is at his girlfriend's house in Brentwood. And you're not going to do a search there. So stand down. She said this in front of all of us. Okay? So that was the end of my part 24. Now, part 25 that we're finally getting into, whatever. So that happened. Okay? We're going to get back to that. After all this happened, I was just beside myself. I was like, wow, we caught them, evidence, arrests, white powder, stolen pew-pew, loaded, chambered, and they all went to court and then got all of their travel requirements loosened and their AA classes removed. Like, what? So at this point, I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to use my card. 2.5 years ago, right after the incident, the assault happened, the executive producer of TMZ, Charles Latibido, texted me. He got my phone number from somebody, texted me and was like, thank you so much for what you did for our guy. When you feel better and you're healed, Harvey Levin and I would love to take you to lunch to say thank you. And I was like, that is so nice of you. Wow. But I never took him up on the offer. But I figured at this point, you know what? I'm going to ask for help. So I had Charles's number. So I texted him and I said, hey, we need to meet up. We need to talk about this. There's something really corrupt happening and I need you guys to TMZ it. You know, I need you guys to put all the scandal out there because it's scandal. So Charles was like, okay, how about we meet for dinner? Let's meet at this little restaurant in Brentwood called, I think, Toscana. I think it's called. It's on San Vicente. So I said, okay, great. I'm going to bring a friend, witness, with me. He's like, great. We meet him there. So this is like end of January of 2018, about a week before the final hearing for this whole probation violation. So we get to Toscana, me, my friend, and Charles. We're eating pizza. We're having apps. We're having a couple drinks. We're talking for like over 2 hours. And I tell him everything that's been going on. And he's just like, he's in shock. He's doing his best impression of shocked and like, oh, that's terrible. And at this time, I have no idea about any corruption. So I'm totally like thinking, oh, he's going to save us, you know. During that dinner, Charles told me and my friend that Jacob Castellan, the TMZ paparazzi who I went to save, he told us that his injuries were so severe and his both physically, mentally, and emotionally that he took like 3-4 months off of work, like could not go back. He also said that Jacob Castellan was so shook up by the incident that he considered not going back out into the field at all as a paparazzi. I'm not going to call him a journalist or a reporter because he's just, you know. But he told us that's how serious it was. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy, you know. Then Charles said, well, look, we can't cover your story right now because we're just so busy with Trump stuff right now. It's like early 2018. He's like, there's just so much Trump stuff. And our whole team is just busy, busy, busy. And I totally fell for it and was like, okay, that doesn't make sense, but I'm going to make it make sense because I need to believe you. So Charles goes, okay, but how about this? He goes, I know somebody really well over at KTLA, a much smaller, tiny local news station, not TMZ, KTLA. And he says, I can pull a favor over there. This reporter's name is Mary Beth McDade. I'm going to post her picture on the next part when I get into this. But he goes, Mary Beth McDade, I'll call her, give her your number, vice versa. You guys can get in touch, and she will cover this next secret hearing down at the airport court next week for you. And I was like, oh, my God. Thank you. Like, he's going to make this happen. And Charles goes, and if she doesn't do it for some reason, then we will cover, TMZ will cover this story big. And I was like, that's amazing. Okay. So I left Toscana with my friend. I remember, like, we walk out and I ended up collapsing in the street. Like, I was just so overwhelmed. Just feeling like I was going to be safe. I was going to be protected because I had been intimidated and harassed and stalked by somebody for the previous couple of years. And I just felt like if TMZ covered this, like, there was my safety net. Like, they won't mess with me anymore because the world's going to be watching. And I remember I was, like, collapsed on the ground and my friend was, like, lifting me up and put me, like, on a bench or something like that or a little wall and until I could breathe again. And then we see Charles drive by in his little Porsche. I'm like, thank you. And then the very next day, I think it was, I got in touch with Miss Mary Beth McDade of KTLA. And she was like, yeah, me and my videographer, we're going to support you. We're going to be at that hearing. It starts at 8:30 a.m. on the 5th. We'll be there at like 7:45, 7:30, ready to go. We're going to, have the big camera. We're going to have a microphone in the Drizz's face. Like, why did you do this? Why are these, like, hearings illegal and you're not telling the victims about them, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's amazing. So, she was doing the whole, like, women got to support women, sister. And I was like, yes, like, amazing. That's not what happened. And I'll get into that. I don't have time in this part to tell that whole story, but I'm going to get into that in the next part when I cover what happens in that hearing and then what happened immediately after the hearing. So thanks for nothing, TMZ. Thank you, everybody else, though, for having better critical thinking skills than anybody at TMZ and working in the justice system. You're amazing. You're hired. Bye.